Saturday is etched in my memory as a day of tense waiting. The weather was stifling, thick, hot. An oppressive, and I was told later that the barometer had swung wildly throughout the day. I'd barely slept, though my wife had managed some rest. I was up early, stepped into the garden before breakfast, and stood quietly, listening. But from the direction of the common, there was nothing. No movement. Only the high trill of a lark slicing through the silence. Then came the familiar rattle of the milkman's cart, the same as any other day. I went around to the side gate and called to him for news. He told me that troops had surrounded the Martians during the night, and artillery was on its way. As if to confirm it, I heard a train moving toward Woking. A strangely reassuring sound. "They're not to be killed," the milkman said, "not unless absolutely necessary." I saw my neighbor out in his garden and went over to chat. He was calm, convinced that the military would sort everything out before the day was done. "It's a shame they make themselves so unapproachable," he mused. "I'd be curious to know how they survive on another planet. Might learn something useful." He walked to the fence and offered me a handful of strawberries. He gardened generously, always. As we talked, he told me the pine woods around the Byfleet golf links had caught fire. "They say another one of those things landed there, number 2, he said. "One's more than enough, really. The insurance companies will be bleeding cash when this is all over." He laughed lightheartedly as he said it, then turned serious. "Poor Ogilvy," he added. After breakfast, I felt restless. I decided to walk down toward the common. Under the railway bridge, I encountered a group of soldier sappers. I believe wearing round caps, dusty red jackets unbuttoned to reveal blue shirts, with dark trousers and heavy boots. They told me the canal crossing was closed, and I saw a guardsman from the Cardigan Regiment standing watch at the bridge. I struck up conversation and described what I'd seen the previous evening. None of them had seen the Martians firsthand. Their understanding was vague, and they peppered me with questions. They weren't even sure who was commanding the operation. Rumors swirled of a dispute at the Horse Guards. Sappers, being generally better educated than regular infantry, debated the likely course of action with insight. "Crawl up under cover and rush them," one suggested. "Yeah, right," another scoffed. "You think that heat ray cares about cover? It'll cook you alive." "What we need," said a third, "is to trench. Dig close enough to strike." "Always with the trenches," someone groaned. "You should have been born a rabbit. They got necks," asked another, a dark-skinned man with a pipe. I described them again. No necks, round bodies, tentacles. "Octopuses," he muttered. "Fishers of men. Not fish fighters this time. Killing beasts like that isn't murder," someone muttered grimly. "Why not just shell 'em to pieces?" said the pipe smoker. "You can't know what they'll do. Where are your shells then?" the first one snapped. "We don't have time. Gotta rush 'em. Do it now." They continued arguing among themselves. Eventually, I left and walked to the railway station to buy every newspaper I could get my hands on. I won't bore you with a play-by-play of that long morning and afternoon. I couldn't catch a glimpse of the common. Even the towers at Horsell and Chobham churches were now under military control. The soldiers had no information. The officers, even less. People in town had relaxed again, reassured by the sight of armed forces. That's where I heard from Marshall, the tobacconist, that his son had been among those killed on the common. In fact, people on the outskirts of Horsell were being told to lock up and evacuate. I returned home around 2 in the afternoon, exhausted, and the heat had turned the day sluggish. I tried to cool off with a cold bath. At around 4:30, I went back to the station, hoping for an evening paper. The morning editions had bungled most of the fact-sketchy accounts of Stent, Henderson, Ogilvy, and others being killed. Not much I didn't already know. The Martians still hadn't shown themselves. They stayed in their pit, hammering away, pumping out smoke. Clearly, they were preparing for something. Papers repeated the same useless phrase. Fresh attempts at signaling made no success. A sapper told me the signals came from a guy lying in a ditch waving a flag on a pole. The Martians paid it the same attention we'd give a cow mooing in a field. Still, all the armament, all the build-up, something stirred in me. My imagination ran wild, picturing bold offensives and glorious victories. Imagined the invaders being crushed in dramatic fashion. Flicker of my old childhood fantasies of war and heroism came to life. Around 3, I began hearing the regular thump of guns from Chertsey or Adelstone. The second cylinder, the one in the burning pine woods, was being shelled to stop it from opening. By 5, a field gun had been hauled into position near Chobham to target the first pit. Then, around 6 o'clock, I was sitting in the summer house with my wife, talking excitedly about the impending battle when it began. A deep, distant boom came from the common then gunfire. Seconds later, there was a tremendous crash nearby that shook the ground. I rushed out into the yard just in time to see the treetops around the Oriental College erupt into flame. The church tower beside it collapsed in a cloud of brick dust. The college roof looked like it had been hit with a battleship cannon. The pinnacle of the mosque was simply gone. Our chimney cracked, sent red tiles flying, and a pile of rubble landed in the flower bed outside my study window. My wife and I stared at each other in shock, and it hit me. We were in range of the Martians' heat ray. I grabbed her arm and pulled her into the street. I went back inside for the servant, who was shouting about a box she wanted. I told her I'd fetch it myself. "Can't stay here," I said, as the firing resumed. "But where are we supposed to go?" my wife asked, trembling. Leatherhead came to mind. Her cousins lived there. "Leatherhead," I shouted. She looked down the hill. People were spilling out of houses, confused and scared. How do we even get there? Just then, a squad of hussars rode under the bridge. 3 charged into the Oriental College, and 2 dismounted, knocking on doors. The sun broke through the smoke in eerie crimson beams, making the street look like it was drenched in blood. "Wait here," I said. "You're safer here," and I took off running. I knew the Spotted Dog pub kept a horse and cart. I found the landlord at the bar, completely oblivious to what was happening outside. He was in the middle of a deal selling a pig. "I need your cart," I said. "I'll need £1," he replied, "and I've got no one to drive it." "Give you 2, I said, stepping around another customer, "and I'll bring it back tonight." He blinked. "What's the rush?" "I'm evacuating my family." That convinced him. I drove the cart to the house, loaded my wife and the servant, and ran back inside to grab what valuables I could. Outside, the road glowed red with the reflection of flames. One of the hussars was running from house to house, calling people out. I shouted after him, "Any news?" He shouted something back, something about a dish cover crawling out of the pit, but he vanished into the smoke. I knocked at my neighbor's house one last time, already knowing they were gone. I retrieved the servant's box, threw it onto the back of the cart, climbed up beside my wife, took the reins, and drove. We were through the smoke, down the hill, and speeding toward Old Woking. Ahead of us, peaceful countryside, a quiet road lined with wheat fields, and the sign of the Mayberry swaying in the breeze. I spotted the doctor's cart just ahead. At the bottom of the hill, I turned back for one last look. Thick black smoke laced with fire rose behind us. It reached far to the east and west from the Byfleet pine woods to Woking town. People were running toward us, panicked. And faintly, through the shimmering heat, I heard the steady rat-tat-tat of a machine gun, then silence. Ren stalwar odd, by where it is F rod. There's also saw one ren up dot cod head dot on all I on a bon or sin reprilin ran ein reread of dot unside dot centos a win sunset and sen when slint sin one sit aside and sans and dot some dad since star will saddle says out I said when the Martians were torching everything they could reach. I'm no expert driver, but instinct took over. I cracked the reins, urging the horse faster. Soon, Woking and Send lay behind us quiet towns, now caught in the shadow of war. If you're still with me, then you know this isn't just a story about Martians. It's about what happens when the world we know cracks open and something unthinkable pours through. In the next episode of the Martian War, we follow the fallout. As the narrator returns to a burning home, civilization begins to crumble, and the full reach of the invasion becomes terrifyingly clear. Subscribe if you haven't already, and keep watching the skies. Episode 10. In the Storm drops soon.